What would be an alternative to Me Too?
So I would try to move towards a patriarchal system where women were slowly phased out of the workplace altogether, and then that solves this problem.
Okay, I disagree.
How would we survive and live?
The same way that we survived and lived for most of our history, which is
Yeah,
without
but that
women
didn't work
inside the
because men would
workforce.
abandon their homes to go to other women. What the first divorce case was because the guy ditched his wife and his kids and went to be with another woman.
Which has what to do with
Wait,
anything?
what?
I'm a widow. I mean, like, what would I
What does
do?
it have to do with anything?
It has to do with everything.
And what does it
How
have
are
to
women
do with
gonna
it?
Survive? How will they survive?
The
if
same
they're
way
not
that they've
working?
always survived without women in the workforce. There was not a problem
How?
with the survival before women were in the workforce.
Well,
There won't
how did
be
it
a
happen before?
problem
Just
with
say that. How
survival
did-
post. Women are
No.
enabled to be in the workforce only through the usage of technology. If you look at the math,
Wait, don't do this diatribe. Answer the question. How
I'm
would a woman, let's say a
trying.
woman gets widowed, how does she survive?
she would probably remarry. But
Why
not
would
only
you wanna
that, the
why-
assets of the husband always have traditionally gone to the woman. Not only that, there's usually an obligation from the family of the person you were widowed from who's going
That's
to help
assuming
you out.
the man was doing everything right. Like the man was just working hard
we
all the time,
can't
saving money, that he
assess
had
we can't
assets.
assess all of society just based
that's
on
how
what
it is
if
now.
risks of what if a meteorite strikes you. That's not
How many
fair.
men do you
And I'm
think
sorry.
right
Hang on.
now-
Let me finish, lady. I'm sorry that a fucking meteorite might strike your husband and he might die, but we're not going to make a societal prescription based on that. That would be insanity. So yes, there's going to be some unfairness baked in, but we can't unfortunately alleviate all unfairness from every situation over all times. We can't do
Isn't
that.
it common right now that like the average savings rate is like negative for like people under 35? So basically every widow under the age of like 35 or 40 is just fucked?
First of all, they're not fucked. If you were to reduce the women's participation in the workforce, you would see a massive increase in salary, more than likely for men. That would that follows, in fact.
No, it doesn't follow.
How does it
Literally.
not?
No, that is
It doesn't
true.
follow because the number one indicator of like countries becoming prosperous and successful is women entering the workforce and starting to own businesses. That's like one of the biggest indicators of it.
Destiny,
talking about
you're
$1
familiar
trillion.
with supply and demand, right? If you have
Yep.
less workers, do you have more of a supply of workers or less of a
You
supply?
understand that when you go
Answer
to
my
high
question
school,
like I just answered yours.
No, I'll answer your question.
Then just say
the
yes.
Supply and demand X graph is an incredibly crude and simplistic way to analyze markets. Yes, of course, if you remove all the women from the workforce, the men will get higher wages.
Then why the
However,
fuck did you
you've
just
also
argue
got
they
a-
wouldn't?
What?
Why did you just argue they wouldn't?
Because every single economist in the world agrees with me and not you, Andrew. So
Agrees
maybe
with
there's a
you about
better-
what? You just
agrees
agreed with
that
me.
when women start to own businesses and enter the workforce.
You,
one of the
bro,
higher
you
predictors-
just agreed with me and my position that if all women were exited from the workforce tomorrow, salaries for men would skyrocket. You literally just agreed with
Salaries-
that.
salaries-
Trillion
wait,
less
salaries-
dollars
yeah.
in our economy. since
Salaries might increase,
Mm-hmm.
Andrew. Do you think murdering half the U.S. population would be good for the economy? Because now you've got
That's a
half the
red.
workforce-
What happens to productivity?
So
Like, what happens
so
to
hang on. So
productivity?
phasing women out for one thing. There's a massive distinction between that and murdering half the population. But assuming that we granted your hypothetical and half the population was somehow murdered, salaries would still increase for the half that were here. Yes, Destiny.
No,
And
that's
what would
not.
happen to
That's just not how it
productivity?
works.
Yes,
There's
that.
no-
Then why did you
will
just
not
get done
find-
saying that that's how it
No,
works?
I didn't get done saying. You're using a high school supply-demand graph to analyze an entire worker economy. Workers are a supply in the economy. Generally, for an economy, when you increase your supplies, you increase the standards of living, you increase the GDP, you increase wages across the board. Here's a question, Andrew. If we
So you
look-
just
if we
agreed
look
with
at-
me again.
No, I didn't.
You
agree with
did.
you, Andrew. I agree with you that the very crude supply-demand graph might seem to support what you're saying, but there's a
Uh-huh.
whole bunch of reasons why a crude supply and demand graph would never explain in something entirely like wage markets for an entire society. That's absurd.
You just listen. You've agreed with me in every way you possibly can. You just keep deferring to, but there's other complexities which might come in. Okay, fair enough. There might be some other complexities that come in, but men's salaries, if women exited the workforce tomorrow, would increase drastically. There's no way around that.
And then they would decrease. Yes, your consumer base would fall. Your overall level of wealth would
Yeah.
fall. Your overall, like everything.
Why would
Jerry,
your consumer base fall?
Women entering the workforce has brought so much money to the economy when you compare it to like if women were never, that those changes never happened. So the economy has 100% been benefited by women entering the workforce.
Why?
Hold on. No, wait. This isn't even up for debate. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it's not.
Where are
It's
all of these?
not.
I'm sorry. Answer this. Where are all of these hyper-competitive countries that don't let women in the workforce because they want to be more competitive on the world stage? Can you name like one?
You mean nations which are in the West, they're all egalitarian, and so they've all pushed for this. However,
I'm gonna restate
we
my
can,
question once you
yeah, and
finish
I'm
your
answering
rambling.
your question.
You're not
We
answering
can
that.
look at the markers before women entered in the workplace, and we were very prosperous.
First of all,
No,
no,
I think
we're
that's
not.
what
Yes,
you
we
look at.
were.
You
We
look
were
at-
very
I'm asking
prosperous.
you, where are the countries that are outcompeting everybody else because they're like, we're not going to let our women enter the workforce because it's better for our country? Give me one.
Yeah, so for
Okay,
instance, like
again,
China would-
you're
Wait,
making
Lauren, let Andrew answer, and then
yeah.
we'll go to you. Go
Listen, there's a distinction to be made here. That
You're not
even
gonna
if
answer.
I
You don't have an
can't,
answer. No, you're rambling.
so I'm
Where's
telling
Lauren
you,
at?
I'm
What was
telling
your
you the
answer?
truth.
You're not-
Right
you
now,
have
in
no answer
current,
because you're-
right now, currently,
Adding
in
trillions.
existence in the West, no, I couldn't point to one because of egalitarianism. But I can still use the historic marker to show that those same nations, before women entered the workforce in mass, were quite prosperous.
Sorry.
I think it's
That
like
doesn't
a
answer his
decent
question
point.
still.
That
How did that
it's a
not
decent
answer your
point.
question?
Because he asked you for an example of a country today that exists.
All
today as-
Western nations were prosperous
I'm trying to
even
compare
before
a lot.
women entered the
Let's go
workforce.
back in
All of
time.
them.
You're giving me the argument that like women entering the workforce is like in like I don't know, has made it so reality TV has appeared. You're just correlating two things that aren't necessarily related to each other. The way that you would study this in econ is you wouldn't go, what was it like 500 years ago? And now let's compare it today. You would compare one country to other countries.
In
And you would say,
econ,
oh,
you wouldn't
well,
you wouldn't look at the historic standards? I think you would.
no, you would never look. No, you don't look at. That's why when
You
do
don't
any
look at
econ
historic
research-
standards?
No. Open the NBR. Open any econ study ever. You don't say like, oh well, 50 years ago, what was it like? Let's see how this. Like, for instance, when you do minimum wage experiments, you go state by state. You pick placebo cities.
So when
You
a
compare-
Keynesian economist, sorry,
I
goes
don't know
to
what
the
you
goes
mean
to
by Keynesian
if a
economics, bro. I
Keynesian
don't have the
if a
political term. I'm just
Keynesian,
talking about
hang
the
on,
research.
stop, whatever economist you want, but I'll just say Keynesian. If a Keynesian economist goes in and to a government position and he wants to offer economic solutions, wouldn't he appeal to Keynes? And Keynes markets and solutions, and those market
No,
solutions
no
are going to be
economist
based
knows
on,
policy. No,
those standards from that. What do you
No,
mean?
No, you don't go up to a guy and you go, hey, what about Keynes? Hey, what about the 1950s?
You do.
No, you. Okay.
For
Well, first of all,
economics,
you
of course you do.
No, you don't.
I'll even
No,
grant
you
you
don't.
that. But they would highlight examples of, hey, this country implemented Keynesian economics or economic policies, and that this is how it played out. As
No,
as
we
well.
don't use a historic standard, remember? Destiny just said
No,
you don't ever
no,
look at
that-
a historic
that is
standard when it
no,
comes
no.
to the economy. It's the
That is
most,
exactly
that
what
is the
Destiny is asking
dumbest
for.
single
He's
thing
asking
I have
for
ever heard in my life, by the way.
Policy that
Andrew.
banned women
I
from
have
work.
never heard anything
And
that
resulted in
stupid
increase in
in my
GDP.
life. Now,
Andrew,
I want to ask you,
let's
Corey.
go on,
Corey,
Lauren.
do you think that it's unwise to look at historic standards when you're making economic policy, Corey?
Across the board, universally, no, there are some lessons to be learned from history, but to Destiny's point, like making economic policy today, generally speaking, is driven by data generated today and looking at other policies.
Yes, but you're
other
still
countries.
looking at a historic standard and you're comparing the data. That way you know which is good and which is bad policy.
Can you give me an example?
How
of a
can you
major
make
policy
a
decision or
policy for the
single
future
piece of
with-
econ research that's looking back to the 1950s for modern day insight into how we should be doing government policy?
Oh yeah, well that's done all the time. Of course. Of
Oh, then you
course.
should be able to name one time. It's
Yeah,
done.
well, I can send over tons of data that goes over 100
Name
years
one.
of
You just said
economic
all the
policy.
time. You don't have
I
one off
just
the top of
did.
your head.
Keynesian economics,
That's not
Austrian
a study.
economics.
That's not a policy. That's not anything.
No, hang on. The Keynesian economics is our current policy, Destiny.
You're fuck. Oh god, why am I getting baited by this? I'm sorry.
Keynesian
Okay,
economics is our current. I'm sorry, it is.
Remember when Greenspan was like Keynesian economics? That's why we're going to raise the rates. That's what, yeah, like,
Hang on. I promise Lauren can talk. Let her talk, and then we'll.
Yeah,
move on to
so-
the next topic.
Okay, Andrew, I agree with you a lot in this debate. However, with Destiny's point, why, for instance, wouldn't China like force all of the women to stay at home and then have all of the men be in the workforce if truly that was what created the most prosperous?
One of the biggest problems right now is a labor shortage. It's actually due to a lack of human beings. I
So what do you
Wait,
understand.
isn't the labor shortage good because it increases
Bro, I'm
wages,
trying-
Andrew?
Let me finish.
Yeah,
Okay.
tell us. Remember the supply demand graph.
No, it has not increased wages. Wages have essentially been stagnant. There hasn't
Yes.
been much in the way
That's
of wage
true.
increases at all, Destiny.
Because of women, and I
No,
think
no, wait,
that's
hold on,
a lot of it
explain it.
because of women in the workforce. Actually,
There's a
So
labor
I think
shortage,
that
though,
is an
Andrew.
issue with
Less
women in the
workers.
workforce.
What's
if
that?
You have more people in the workforce.
Yes,
you
and
have-
hang on. Yes, Destiny, wait a second. And since the labor shortage, that was basically the first time in my entire lifetime, probably yours too, where people could actually go in and begin to negotiate salaries because of this shortage. Yes, Destiny.
Yeah.
Okay, you get it now, Destiny. Yeah.
Yes, you proved your point. So then answer Lauren's question. Why does
I
he try to
did.
say, hey, so what? Okay, what was the
So
answer? I
no,
missed
you
it.
need to concede. So concede
Why
on this
doesn't
point.
Why doesn't China tell women
First,
stay home from
back
work?
up and concede to the point that I was
I'm not
correct.
conceding anything to you.
So
because
I
you're
so
understanding econ
so
is like
wages
juvenile.
haven't been stagnant due to women in the workforce, even though you just said that. You won't
No,
concede
they
that
haven't been
point.
stagnant. Again, women in the workforce have increased the productivity and increased the real wages and increased every level of economic success, every indicator in every country around the world. That's why, to Lauren's question, why doesn't China tell women to stay home from work?
At this point, there is again a worker shortage, which is going on
He's
globally.
not answering the question. He has no answer.
That is
It's
the answer.
intentional. There's like a debate tactic, literally.
No, how is that not an answer?
Because I'm
Andrew,
asking you,
are
why
you
doesn't
saying
China
that- are
stay?
you- Wait, let
Why
me
doesn't China?
let me see if I can bridge the gap. Andrew, are you saying that the reason that China doesn't tell women to stay at home is because there's a labor shortage? They don't have enough labor force to do that.
This is right now. This is a global phenomenon, and
Look
this
at him
has to do
rambling.
with the fact that China had a one-child policy, and it's the same thing with our fertility rates here. We can't keep up with the supply right now. We can't. We just can't do it because you have the essentially the 18 to 30-year-olds are going to subsidize the generation
He's still not
before
gonna answer.
and
There's
the
no answer.
4 generations after. And so you need this pool, but we're now entering into this section where you have this pool, which subsidizes all these generations, is so small that you have a huge labor shortage across the board.
If we
That's the
actually
one you
really
need the
open it,
most.
Why would getting rid of women from labor?
Hang on. I'm going to bridge the gap. I'll rephrase the question because I do see your point. Well, what about if we take a country like India, right? They have insane amounts of people being born. Why would they, like following Destiny's logic, why would they not just exclude women from
Lauren's
the workforce?
logic. Thank you very much.
Well,
Or Lawrence,
I mean, India's caste system does often exclude women, and some of the Muslim nations often do exclude women. So I don't know what you're talking about. In this case, we're talking about a Western phenomenon. We have entered into a labor shortage
China's the West.
because of I'm talking
Japan's the
about
West.
I'm
Korea's
giving
the
you
West.
I'm giving
Wait,
you a
Destiny,
prop.
let him answer.
And by the way, yes, South Korea is completely westernized, 100%. Do you disagree, Destiny?
I don't know what your definition of westernized is.
They listen to they're basically a U.S. port at this point.
I don't know what that means. But okay.
Okay, they're basically, I mean, we run South Korea. South Korea is a massive American port. Our culture has definitely, since the Korean War, reframed South Korea. It's basically, it might as well just be like an extension of an American state at this point.
Andrew's right about that, but let's let him answer the.
No,
initial
I want
question.
Destiny to answer to this. Would you agree that that's true?
I'm not answering until you answer the China question. You haven't answered it.
You just made a claim. You said, what about South Korea? Is that the West? Well, yeah, kind of.
Weaseling away. I made this claim because you said only Western countries do this, but countries around
No,
the world.
I'm not
have
saying
added women
just
to
the West.
workforce.
I was just giving you a
So then
reflection
I'll
of
ask
the
the question
West.
one more time so the audience can hear you evade it. If you said that removing women from the workplace was good, why doesn't China just order it to happen because it would be good for the country?
Well, like I said, at the moment, China is dealing with a problem which happened from their one-child policy. They're dealing with a labor shortage as well because this key demographic that they rely on.
All right.
How is this not an answer?
No,
Because
Destiny,
you're saying there's a labor shortage, so they're not going to get. What?
He's answering the question.
No,
He
hold on,
disagrees.
Alex. He's not. He's saying there's a labor shortage, so they don't want to get women off of the workplace. What do you think would happen in the United States if we axed 50% of our workforce when our unemployment is at like 3.25%?
Didn't say that you should axe it tomorrow.
Well,
I had a
doesn't
plan
this
to
present the
gradually
one-child
phase
policy?
women out so that women were more comfortable staying at home than in work. And so this way we could try to get our population back up because it's been completely
when
devastated.
When you've moved off of day one supply and demand graphs, go look up like the lump of labor fallacy,